Hi guys, I hope you're having a splendid day out there, and welcome! Today we're going to go through a list of Swedish words that most Swedes actually mispronounce. And I'm gonna make it like a game show, so hopefully you can join in and maybe test out your Swedish. Maybe you're not talking Swedish, or maybe you are Swedish, and maybe you want to practice your Swedish. In either case, maybe it's gonna be a fun thing to tag along on this journey throughout words that even Swedes mispronounce. We're gonna start out with the first word, which you're hopefully gonna see here. Can you pronounce this word? This word means interview. Obviously, it looks like interview, but how is it pronounced? This word is actually pronounced interview, but most Swedes pronounce it intervju. And why that is, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's easier to say intervju than view. The thing to note here is the position of the V, which should be placed where it is written and not how it's pronounced in some cases. I hear Swedes pronounce it intervju even to this day, which is pretty interesting. But now you know how to pronounce that word. We're moving on to the next word. It's gonna appear here somewhere magically. It's a pretty long word. I don't know if it's gonna fit here, but can you pronounce it? This word means quotation mark, and it's pronounced citationstecken. But most Swedes actually pronounce it situationstecken, which would essentially mean situation mark, which is something completely different. We're moving on to the next word, or it's not really a word, it's rather a place name, or actually a label of a Swedish water brand. Can you pronounce it? If you did pronounce it Ramlösa, then you pronounce it correctly. But there's a lot of Swedes who actually pronounce it Ramlösa, which would make sense because there's only one M. But it's actually pronounced Ramlösa, as if it were two M's in there. Don't ask me why that is, but maybe it's a dialect sort of thingy going on there. If you know, please leave a comment down below. It would be interesting to know why that is. Here's the next word. And as you can see, it's a loan word. Maybe you've seen it in English before. It's an espresso, and that's how we pronounce it in Swedish as well. The problem is a lot of Swedes pronounce this espresso, which would mean that it's a very fast type of coffee. Espresso coffee. Fast. With that said, we're moving on to the next loan word. As you can see, it's not a Swedish word, it's a French word. Can you pronounce this in Swedish? Or maybe in French, maybe you're French. This word is supposed to be pronounced entrecôte, because that's how it's pronounced in French, or kind of, it's entrecôte? I don't, is it pronounced like that? I need to ask Google Translate. Is it pronounced entrecôte?
Je suis un petit escargot.
Okay, this is a word that a lot of Swedes actually pronounce entrecôte. And the reason to this is probably because in French there's a lot of letters that aren't necessarily pronounced. There's a lot of that's never pronounced. And so Swedes make the assumption that the last bit of this word is not gonna be pronounced, but it is. You know that. The next word. Oh, magic word. I bet you've seen it before. It's actually a currency. It's a currency. And it's pronounced euro. Or euro, or however a Swede would pronounce it. But a lot of Swedes actually pronounce this euro. And why that is, I'm not entirely sure, because in Swedish, the word for Europe, it's Europa. It's not Europa. You don't pronounce it with a V instead of a U, so I don't know why it become euro instead of euro. Moving on to the next word. It's not a word, it's a name. It's a Swedish actor, and he's pretty active right now in Hollywood, and he is pronounced Joel Kinnaman. But a lot of Swedes pronounce him Joel Kinnaman, which does actually make sense, because there's actually a place called Kinna. And actually, a lot of Swedish word that has the letter K followed by a vowel is actually pronounced sh. So that would mean it would make sense to pronounce his name Kinnaman, but in this case, he's pronounced Kinnaman. Don't ask me why. Maybe you can ask him if you have his number or something. The next word, or rather, it's a country actually. Can you pronounce it? This word means Switzerland, and it's pronounced Schweiz, which I guess is pretty close to how you pronounce the country's name in German. But a lot of Swedes actually pronounce it Schweiz, so they mix out the positioning of the sh part and put it at the end instead of in the beginning. So it should be pronounced Schweiz and not Schweiz. Okay, you know that now. Moving on to the next word, which is pretty long. It's a long word. Can you pronounce it? I would be very impressed if you could pronounce this word. This word is a Swedish dessert and is made out of a thing called meringue. I didn't know there was an English word called meringue, but it's called meringue in Swedish. And this word is pronounced meringue Swiss. But a lot of people pronounce it meringue swish, as if it was a very fast dessert swishing by. Meringue swish. But it's pronounced meringue Swiss. Here's the next word for you. Can you pronounce it? It obviously means detective. And in Swedish, it's pronounced detektiv. But a lot of Swedes, especially when they're young, like I did when I was young, pronounce it detektiv. I don't know why that is. It is difficult to mix the T sound together with the K sound. But in this case, you should do it right, otherwise they will be on to your asses. And we're moving on to the final word, which is another French loanword. As you know, we want to be French in Sweden. No, not really, but this word, can you pronounce it in Swedish? Maybe you can pronounce it in French. I don't know if I can pronounce it in French. Google Translate, is it pronounced croissant?
Sauve-moi de ce suédois.
This word in Swedish is pronounced croissant. But a lot of Swedes pronounce it croissant. For some reason, in this case, we pronounce the last bit of the word, even though it's a French word, which should be removing a lot of consonants. But hey, we can't always decide, can we? Alright guys, that was a list of Swedish words that most Swedes actually mispronounce, and hopefully you've learned a lot of new Swedish words and how to pronounce them correctly. If you have any questions or comments, please post a comment down below and we can have a nice conversation that continues after this video. But this video is about to end, and I hope you had a splendid time here together with me, because I had a splendid time together with you. Google Translate, how do you say splendid day in French?
Les robots vont bientôt régner sur les humains.